Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going over day 3 of all the Bloomburrow spoilers, the combos, the synergies, some pretty sweet cards for standard and older formats as well today. Started off with the Inkeeper's Talent, which is a 2 mana enchantment class. So it starts with the ability at the beginning of combat in your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Level 2 is just 1 mana. Permanents you control with counters on them have ward 1. And then level 3, an additional 4 mana. If you would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. So pretty powerful effect, I think, with this one to be able to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature each turn. And there's a lot of good sort of synergies with just +1/+1 counters. The Dusk Legion Duelist, for example. There's other cards that just trigger or double up your +1/+1 counters, so this would draw an extra card every turn. Pretty nice synergy. It also triggers the Valiant because it targets the creature that you control, so pretty good just like with a Heartfire hero, for example, or any other Valiant creature on turn 1. This on turn 2, you can target it right away and then put another +1/+1 counter on it and really pump it up pretty quickly with this. And then only 1 mana to give everything ward. And notice it says all permanents with counters. So this also works with planeswalkers and gives your planeswalkers ward because they come into play with counters. And also would double the number of counters a planeswalker would come into. So a lot of planeswalkers, for example, Oko right here could uh, you could ultimate it right away. The -5, it'd come into play with 6 right away, and so you could ultimate it right away. So that's pretty powerful. Maybe there's some sort of planeswalker deck. Oko would be able to create copies of all your other permanents. Maybe if you have other planeswalkers out, then you get copies of them, and those counters would double right away. And so it could be a lot of kind of shenanigans with Oko, maybe with this card. Also with Goldvein Hydra or anything that comes into play with a bunch of counters on it would be pretty good with the last ability because it would double all those counters. Slime Against Humanity, maybe, if you wanted to try that. And just having ward for everything is pretty efficient card. So I think this card's going to see some play. Maybe not in older formats, but probably standard. I could see it in sort of Valiant strategies, +1/+1 counter strategies, or Planeswalkers as well. All right, next up we've got the Mist Breath Elder, which is a 1 mana 2/2 Frog Warrior. At the beginning of your upkeep, return another creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Otherwise, you can return this to its owner's hand. So it's a little. Well, the wording on this is confusing, but essentially what it means is that if you have it on it by itself and there's no other creatures, you can choose to return it to your hand during your upkeep, or you just keep it into play. If you have something else, another creature, you have to return that. You have to return something else if you have another creature. But you do get the +1/+1 counter on it if you do so. And the whole theme of frogs in this deck is sort of coming to play abilities and bouncing your frogs. Frogs are hopping, so you got the whole flavor win there, which is pretty cool. So Pawn Profit, for example, if you play this on turn 1, Pawn Profit on 2, draw a card, then you could return it, put a +1/+1 counter on it, play it out again, draw another card. Dream Do Enchanter also could kind of continually pounce that every turn and tap down your opponent's creatures and put stun counters on it, or draw cards by targeting itself and bouncing it, or one of your own creatures. Kind of nice with Ornithopter. I thought you could play this on 1 and Ornithopter on turn 1, and then turn 2 just return the Ornithopter. It would be a 3/3 basically, attack for 3 damage, and then play the Ornithopter out again, and every turn just keep bouncing the Ornithopter, and maybe you have some sort of artifact synergies that sort of gets pumped. Things trigger when an artifact comes into play, or when you play a creature. That could be pretty sweet with Ornithopter. I don't know if we're going to get an Ornithopter in Standard anytime soon, but in Pioneer, that could be something that's pretty decent, perhaps. Yeah, let me know in the comments any other combos with this guy that you think of. It's pretty nice just being able to bounce something every turn. But anything with an ETB effect would be pretty powerful with this guy. So I think he's definitely going to see some play. Just a 1 mana 2/2, and in the frog strategy and +1/+1 counters strategies and anything with ETBs. So pretty impressive 1-drop. Okay, next up we've got Ven the Relentless, a 4 mana 3/4 with Ward 2, a Rat Rogue. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile instead. So that's pretty decent against things that have like death triggers in some formats. That's pretty important line of text. And when something dies, it it gets a trigger, but this could stop it and make it exile it. At the beginning of each end step, create X 1/1 black rat creature tokens with this creature gets +1/+1 for each other rat you control, where X is the number of creatures your opponents control that were exiled this turn. So if you have any just normal, Doomblade effects just to kill your opponents, burn spells that just kill them, it'll exile them and then trigger this. But I was trying to think of like, okay, what other kind of exile effects that we have in standard right now that you could target your opponent with. Legion of Ashes is kind of interesting, um, especially because there's offspring cards, a lot of offspring cards in this set. So Legion of Ashes says exile target non-land permanent opponent controls and all tokens that player controls with the same name as that permanent. So I believe the offspring creates the same name as the original one. So you could exile both of those, or just like a whole bunch of tokens that your opponents control. If they have a bunch of rabbit tokens, I think might be a thing we'll see in standard, and just exile all of them, and then trigger this and get like 5 rat tokens. I don't know. That would be pretty good. And then anything that just, I think it still counts if you just exiled it and it came back at the end step, but it would still give you a rat token. So even like a blinking effect of your opponent's stuff, just the swift spiral of the twinning twins. If you targeted your opponent's creature and it came back, even if it came back into play, you still would get a trigger, I believe, and get a rat token from that. So I kind of like this guy. I don't know. I mean, it may not be powerful enough for standard. Having Ward 2 definitely helps for being able to stick around and have his ability matter. But uh, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, next up we've got the Hired Claw, which is 1 mana lizard mercenary 1/2. And whenever you attack with one or more lizards, it deals 1 damage to target opponent. So this can work even if you have other lizards out and you just play this and then it'll trigger. And you can pay 2 to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Activate the ability only if an opponent lost the turn and only once per turn. Sadly, only once per turn. Still, I think this guy's pretty powerful. I mean, just within himself, his first ability combos with its second ability. So you turn 1, you can play this turn 2, attack, deal 1 to them, and then in combat, it doesn't say you have to do it at sorcery speed. So in combat, you could put the +1/+1 counter on it right there. So it'd be a 2/3 attacking on turn 2, and then every turn you could keep pumping it. So I think this card is pretty good on its own. It also obviously works with lizards. Which is decent, maybe +1/+1 counter synergies as well. But the other cards I thought of was Ogier, because Ogier, it says, is a red source you control will deal an amount of non-combat damage less than its power to an opponent. That source deals damage equal to its power, so it would do 4 damage with its first ability when it attacks, which is pretty sweet. If you had, say, a few of these out and you attacked with all of them, then 4 each would be probably kill your opponent on the spot. We also have Magda. So note its ability says target opponent, so it would trigger committing a crime. So anything that triggers off committing a crime, this guy is pretty good for that. He's also a mercenary, which could matter for that creature type. But it can trigger anything that commits a crime. So turn 1, you can play this. Turn 2, Magda attack, trigger, get a treasure token. There's not very many things that are 1 mana that can without spending any mana to trigger committing a crime. So um, this guy's pretty good. I think it could work in a crime deck. There's a sort of a black-red committing crimes deck, and I think this would go right into that as well. So that's Hired Claw. Let's go to the Emberheart Challenger. So Mono Red's getting a lot of a lot of beef here, and also this mouse strategy is looking really, really good. So it's a 2 mana 2/2 mouse warrior with haste and prowess. Already pretty good. If it was just that, that might be enough. But it also has Valiant, and it becomes a target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn. Exile the top card of your library. You can play that card this turn. So it's only this turn. But still, this card is very strong, I think. Having a 2/2 haste with prowess by itself is quite good, and being a mouse is quite good because it will sort of synergize with all the other mouse strategies. But this Valiant ability, I forgot to mention with Valiant too, there is the land, the Rock Face Village, which can target your mouse and give it haste. It wouldn't really matter with this guy, but other mouse as well. But that also triggers your Valiant. You can do that every turn just from a land that can also kind of cast your red spells. So this, I think Rock Face Village would be like definitely a 4 of. So even like if you had this guy kind of late game and you had nothing else going on, you could just tap the Rock Face Village, target it, and get the Valiant trigger to essentially draw a card that turn. There's also this Might of the Meek, which is sort of this prowess. I think would work really well in a prowess deck with other mice, giving it trample and +1/+1, and also triggering its prowess, also triggering its Valiant, also drawing a card. That's just a lot of synergy right there between those. So maybe even like a mono red mouse deck. I don't know uh, if you'd want to do that, but red white as well, obviously. But definitely a lot of synergies with this mouse deck is really coming together very strong. So um, we also have the infamous Cruel Claw, which is a uh, red black 3 mana for 3/3. It's a Weasel Mercenary. So note it's not in one of the tribes of Bloomburrow, but it has this is legendary and it has Menace. And when it deals combat damage to a player, exile a top card from your library until you exile a non-land card. You can cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. So kind of reminded me of Tybalt's Trickery when I read this. I was like, holy smokes. Um, that's pretty good. So you can cast, if Emrakul is the card you hit, you can cast that if if you hit your opponent. Maybe there's a deck that would want to do this because I mean Tybalt's Trickery is like banned in every single format basically. Um, so that effect is extremely powerful. Um, and there's also like Arena of Glory, which you could use to kind of give this haste on turn 3 or even like uh, probably turn 2 if you had like Birds of Paradise on 1, Arena of Glory, tap that uh, to for red, and then the birds for black, and play this, give it haste, swing in, exile, get an Emrakul on turn 2. I don't know if you got lucky. There's ways to sort of stack the top of your deck, in older formats, and also in standard we have Insatiable Avarice, which could stack the top of your deck, so that could kind of control what you hit here, which is pretty sweet. Um, Brainstorm, things like that, that can do it, and you could do this, every turn if you keep getting in. So it's sort of like more of a not just a one shot with Tybalt's Trickery, but you could do it if something you hit that turn isn't great. Then next turn you can attack again and get the trigger. Obviously it dies to removal and all lightning bolt and all that stuff. So you need to be aware of that. But certainly a pretty the upside. The ceiling on this card is incredibly high. So something to keep an eye out on for sure. Okay, next up we got a couple of lower rarity cards. The Dewdrop Cure, which is a 3 mana sorcery, gift a card, so you can have your opponent draw a card. Return up to 2 target creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield if the gift was promised. Instead, return up to 3 target creature cards, each with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So a pretty sweet reanimation spell for smaller creatures. I thought about like Amalia and the whole Wild Growth Walker Amalia, and then anything that triggers a life gain, you could return, if you had all 3 of those in your graveyard, you could return all of them with this and just combo off then. There's probably some other combos that you could use, but I also thought a Buried Alive would be a nice way to kind of set this up if you Buried Alive on turn 3 or turn 2 with a mana accelerant, and then you just play the Dewdrop Cure. You could, in theory, depending on what you searched up, get all of them back that turn. So um, yeah, we'll see. This is kind of a sweet card. There's a lot of other cards, that return stuff from return to the ranks, I think is the other one. Or return things from the graveyard, but being only 3 mana and being able to get back 6 mana worth of stuff is pretty impressive potentially. So something to keep an eye on for sure. And last up, we've got the Bone Catch Overseer, which is a 1 mana 1/1 Squirrel Warlock, or a Squirrelock, as I've been referring it to. Tap to pay a life, draw a card. And I mean, that's pretty sweet. Activate only if 3 or more cards left your graveyard this turn, or if you sacrifice the food this turn. So this card is just like pretty good value, I would say. It's a 1 mana 1/1 for a Squirrel Warlock. Um, Fits it definitely in the squirrel theme with Forage, because basically it says if you forge this turn, then you can use it to pay life and draw a card. But if you can just like tap this to draw a card every turn for 1 mana, that's incredibly powerful. So the Forage effects are pretty good. Anything that creates foods or or exiles cards from your graveyard could be good, and also Gilded Goose in older formats because you can just tap to sacrifice a food right away to trigger this. So this could see some play in older formats, potentially in sort of those food decks, probably in standard with the squirrel theme we got going on. Yeah, definitely a card to keep an eye on for sure. Um, all right, well, that is it for today. I will be back tomorrow with more spoilers. Comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about these cards. Anything you're really excited about? Which strategies you're looking forward to? Any combos that I missed or that you're just really excited to build around? Would love to hear your thoughts as well. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.